King Charles gives a new title to his grandson, Prince Louis, and the reaction from the crowd will leave you speechless. A grandfather's love is special and almost second to none. Hence, King Charles showering Louis with the title might be the most forgiving act of royal nepotism. But here's the kicker. Louis is way down the pecking order of succession, creating more questions than answers. Is the old king backhandedly passing the torch? What does this mean for Louis and his siblings? Join us as we discuss King Charles's decision to give Louis a royal title. A banquet to remember. King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla hosted a huge banquet in the United Kingdom with the President of France and Mrs. Brigitte Macron as their honorable guests. Watched it unfold from July 8th to 10th. 2025, royalty and state powers from the West coming into the United Kingdom post-Brexit were a breath of fresh air and a new beginning for the bilateral relationship between the United Kingdom and the Republic of France. As expected, the state dinner, which was held at St. George's Hall in Windsor Castle, created a massive online buzz, with social media erupting like a volcano as the President of France shook the King's hand and paid that French gentlemanly respect to the Queen Consort. To most people, it was the most anticipated part of the event. Watching the leaders of two different sovereign states share a meal and mead in the warmth of St. George's Hall, hoping the country's alliance would strengthen. However, the night came bearing surprising gifts. The hall had no shortage of food, but dessert was to be served by King Charles himself. While the light in his eyes shone bright as the weighted crown balanced on his head, the atmosphere shifted, and the room got dimmer when the king halted dinner. Soon after, the internet feed was cut off, and the king did the unthinkable. According to royal insiders, the king roused the halls with a beautiful speech, and the applause that followed thundered inside Windsor Castle, shaking it to its core. However, that was but a simple taste of the dessert to come. Prince William immediately looked uneasy. One look at his father, and he could tell that he had a plan, but the looks on the king's face gave nothing away. The constructs of his mind hid easily in his smile, and not one person could tell what his next move was. But it didn't take long before he played his hands. Insiders watched the king raise his hands and gestured to his grandson, Prince Louis of Wales, telling him to make a step forward. At first, it seemed like a grandfather looking to get his mischievous little grandson closer to him in the banquet hall. But his reasons soon became clearer as Louis got closer. Insiders claimed that Prince William and his wife, Princess Catherine, seemed lost in the moment at least, until the king bestowed a royal title on the young prince. The crowd went dead silent, and the filled halls of St. George that had thundered with applause only moments ago fell silent, the consequences of a shocking display that no one saw coming. What exactly was this title, and could it hurt the relationships between Prince William's kids? A royal grumble. Dessert is served, courtesy of the king, and it leaves different tastes on different palates. But who dares to question the imagination and spice of a king? The consequences of giving a title to the youngest son of Prince William Louis, while his older siblings, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, watched, threatened to be dire, especially as the silence fell over the banquet hall. According to palace sources, Prince William was the first to break the silence with a wry laugh and applause, and everyone followed suit. Just like that, life returned, and warmth was back in Windsor Castle. To most people, the king's decision made no sense. Louis was the youngest child, a 7-year-old who wasn't even in high school yet. However, for reasons best known to His Majesty, he was the honored grandson at a banquet attended by the leaders of France. It wasn't long before the usual birds began to sing, ranging from palace maids to government officials and newly wedded wives who had never seen a Windsor surprise. This time, logic meets doubts, and results are just questions with no answers. Or at least, no one was willing to answer. Is this the king's attempt at choosing the heir to the throne for Prince William? Was it just some polite gesture to make the last kid feel seen? How badly would this affect the king's relationship with the three siblings? While these questions festered like a poorly treated flesh wound, and flies of rumors perched on them, secreting guesses, the royal family kept their decorum while the French royalty remained in the banquet with them. Insiders believed that the French president, although taken aback by the king's sudden decision to give a royal title to his grandson, kept his decorum. Although politics and state affairs are important paradigms in the behind-the-scenes discussion between the royal family and the Macrons, optics was just as important. While some palates were disgusted by the unexpected desserts served by the king, the House Windsor kept its decorum fitting for royalty. The French state banquet lasted for hours over the next 2 days, as the president remained an honored guest in the United Kingdom, enjoying the opulent splendor of the Windsors. However, as the world focused on the Windsors' hospitality to the French head of state and his wife, and how much this united front consolidates their political relationships and diplomatic ties, the House Windsor was dealing with the consequences of Louis's unprecedented royal title, especially since the king has made no effort to explain his reason for bestowing him, at that age, with a rare title. The king had mostly always done a poor job at keeping his fondness for his grandchildren away from the camera, but this time, is it possible that he has finally chosen his favorite? King Charles's soft spot for Louis. From the little ear tug to pulling Grandpa's sweater out of shape for a Christmas photo, Prince Louis was the perfect perpetrator, always at the crime scene. However, the king has always shown his love for all three of Prince William's kids, with Prince George and Princess Charlotte as his first two grandkids, and good old Louis coming next. But there was something completely different about how the grandkids were treated, especially the princes. The succession law in the United Kingdom's royal setup has long provided that the first child is heir apparent to the throne, regardless of gender, and in Prince George's case, he was the first child, making him the heir apparent. However, with such a great future comes great responsibility. The king, Charles, had been there himself, and he knew for certain what it took to shoulder the responsibility of being the heir and what it meant to actually don the crown. While George has always had the affection of the House of Windsor growing up, he could only remain a child for so long. No matter how old he was Prince George, the heir apparent to the most coveted throne in the global monarchical paradigm. Hence, he had to grow up fast, especially when he had the eccentric personality of his sister, Princess Charlotte, growing massively beside him. Although he is the heir apparent to the throne and barely a teenager, he still has the responsibility of maintaining the decorum fitting for his position in the British social hierarchy, meaning that he needs to set an example for his siblings to follow. While Princess Charlotte had just about enough about her to ride the storm of being the second oldest child and sister to the heir apparent, Prince Louis was a different breed, younger and an absolute menace. Some of his theatrics have been very well documented in the past. Nothing too insane or out of character for a child, but maybe a little bit too extra for a prince. Prince Louis lived life as it came. He enjoyed the Trooping the Color festivities a little bit more than everyone else. He is either caught at the windows, spitting some joke in someone's ears, which in some cases was one of his siblings, or even Princess Sophia of Edinburgh, when he is feeling like punching above his weight. He ran the lengths of the halls, covered his ears when a few aircraft flew by, and made sure to keep his grandpa honest. It really does not take a genius to see just how much he meant to the old king, who saw the happy-go-lucky kid as some sort of representation or reminder of his younger, vibrant self, who often threw caution to the wind and juggled life, work, and princehood. The king definitely has a complicated relationship with his son, especially after the infamous spare, Prince Harry, left the country in pursuit of love and family. Is there a chance that the king hopes to rewrite history by giving more attention to the spare? And how much has Prince Harry's journey affected him and the crown? Sparing the king's blushes. One of the most poorly guarded secrets in the royal family is Prince Harry's meltdown and decision to leave the palace for the United States. As is tradition, the first child in line of succession to the British throne takes precedence. It was the golden monarchical rule that has guarded the royal family since time immemorial. However, no one seems to ever address the elephant in the room. What happens to the spares when the heir gets all the attention? For some context, King Charles's sister, Princess Anne, was simply given a title inspired by the French royal court, the Princess Royal. This was a title given to the firstborn woman in the British royal family to not only suit the crown, but also give them a place in society as one of the most important pieces in the crown's structural setup. While Princess Anne has her fair bit of grip on the proceedings of the British royal court, her true nature as the second fiddle, overshadowed by her brother's big responsibility as the king, creates a massive divide in their roles in the British royal court, and such was the same for Prince William and Prince Harry. Prince William's birthright was the heir to the throne. Hence, his words carried more weight in large rooms and big meetings, and his influence spanned political and family affairs. He could whisper in the right ears and get his way. However, it was different for Prince Harry, the infamous spare who not only brought home an American wife, but also was African American. While British society has often preached cultural diversity and engaged in its importance, Harry felt betrayed by the very same royal setup that raised him, as they displayed subtle hints that bordered somewhere around hate and racism. While the royal family has neither denied nor confirmed the allegations, Prince Harry's decision to step back from his duties as a working royal and from the United Kingdom as a whole spoke volumes. He could not be under the same roof as a family that rejected his choices. When Harry released his memoir, Spare, in 2023, he could not help but address how his relationship with his brother, Prince William, deteriorated, as they could not see eye to eye whenever Meghan was involved. According to the source, Prince William parroted media narratives about Meghan to her face, calling her arrogant, difficult, rude, and abrasive. Also, when he tried to defend her honor in the same vein, a fight broke out, severing their ties as brothers. However, Harry's biggest regret is his father's loud silence, showing him no support as he stood up against the heir and the royal family on his own. Palace insiders believe that the king lives with regret and has chosen a new path, dealing with spares. But is the king bending royal traditions or just outright challenging them? Breaking the order. Royal titles have never been given. In any case, they are earned. However, should they ever be given, a 7-year-old is least likely to be at the forefront of these awards. The British royal court has always been keen on certain principles, especially when it comes to age and succession. The older ones would inherit, and the younger ones serve, with a bit of incentives now and then to keep their fire burning and maintain that bit of relevance. For some context, aside from Princess Anne, who is largely represented as the hardest-working royal, the king has one more sibling, who somehow has managed to stay off the spotlights, Prince Andrew Mountbatten, popularly called Randy Andy. Back in the day, if there was some sort of debauchery going on anywhere in the United Kingdom, Randy somehow had a part to play in it. But that was just Andy. He was the notorious spare who did whatever he wanted, but somehow no one expected anything from him, as he was not the future ruler of the United Kingdom anyway. Instead, everyone wanted a piece of Charles. They wanted news about his life, Diana, and his decision to divorce her while cheating on her with the ex-wife of Brigadier Andrew Parker Bowles, Camilla Shand. Insiders believe that the same things that happened in King Charles's life as a younger man, forcing his younger siblings into the depths of nigh irrelevance, have spurred him to break the trend of younger siblings, or spares, as they are infamously called, becoming rebellious and almost forfeiting their importance as a virtue of their birth. Some believe that reaching such an advanced age has forced him to seek some form of penance, punishment for failing Diana. However, his feelings of failure transcend Diana's demise. They go all the way to also failing to keep her kids together, with the brothers at opposite sides of the family, and also different views of him as a father. His failures were nearly impossible to repair, as he had not only lost the trust of his household, but also lost his mettle to hold on regardless. Insiders propose that his emotions sometimes serve as barometers for his choices. Hence, they believe that the reasons behind his actions at the banquet may not even be political at all. Sometimes, when he feels overwhelmed by the weight of some of his old choices and living in a country that just cannot seem to forgive him, he makes choices that no one can really explain. However, there have been other theories as to why his emotions may not have been in check in recent times, and some have connected the dots all the way to his most recent health problems. Could this sudden decision really be the ramblings of a man plagued by his sickness? The monarch's malady. As if the crown did not already weigh enough, the king's health yet again hits a roadblock. This time, it's a cancer-sized one. On February 6, 2024, the BBC reported that the king had been diagnosed with cancer, but for some reason, the type of cancer was not reported to anyone. But what happens when a septuagenarian with a divided home gets news of a sickness that is known to take lives as it wants? Do they simply treat it and hope for the best? Or does the king simply award a 7-year-old with a royal title with no care in the world for the ripple effect it might bring? As expected, Buckingham Palace has once again sealed its lips, giving absolutely nothing away about the king's condition. Consequently, the tight-lipped palace bred suspicion, and suddenly everyone wanted a piece of the king. What could they be hiding? How bad is this cancer really? Although the king did make an appearance in July during the banquet, the media had their eyes set on his health. It wasn't long before articles on lymphoma, prostate cancer, and bowel cancer began to make rounds on the internet. And everyone believed that Buckingham was spewing less than they knew. Soon, the United Kingdom began a crusade for accountability, persecuting Buckingham Palace for infringing on the rights of its citizens, as it kept their precious information to itself. However, the king has come out swinging, telling the world of his cancer, albeit without specifics, yet showing faith in his own people. Also, a deliberate exposure to the people of the United Kingdom that cancer is completely indiscriminate in its selection. It is kings and beggars alike. It is a human battle. However, his battle with cancer had kept him away from the public eye for so long, with most of his moves made in the shadows or through delegates, including Prince William. However, aside from his personal battles with cancer, fate seems to have cut him no slack, especially with the Queen Consort's sudden diagnosis of huge health problems. At first, the Queen Consort was said to be dealing with a chest infection that caused pain and burning sensations. However, the chest infections were the least of her worries, as a source from the Times media claimed that she might be literally on her last legs. Just imagine the chaos of the Queen Consort never walks again. This insider source disclosed that the Queen Consort had devised ways to cope with her problems, including the creation of special shoes by hand-picked designers that hide the deformities on her feet. However, the source discloses that she just might finally need a wheelchair, even though she struggles deeply against needing one. However, between the king's sickness and the possibility that it clouds his judgment, what's next for the House of Windsor and Prince William's kids? The Windsor legacy. Old and new. The rules of affection and duty in the royal family have changed over the years, and King Charles lived these experiences over and over again. However, in a time when he is older, the ghosts of Buckingham Palace seem impossible to banish, including Diana, Harry, and for some reason, they continue to seek penance from the king. However, as the king's legacy seems to be on its way to an end, Prince William's experience with a broken relationship between himself and his brother gives him an edge to sculpt a much better legacy. But here's the twist. The king bestowed a royal title on the youngest kid in the family, the fourth in line to the crown. How much of a scar does that leave on the hearts and minds of young Prince George and Princess Charlotte? Speaking of scars, the narrative around the three Windsor kids, George, Charlotte, and Louis, used to be quite different, with George stealing the headlines for obvious reasons, and Charlotte sharing that spotlight with her heavily nuanced sense of responsibility. For some context, Princess Charlotte has been seen numerous times cleaning up her brother's act in public, forcing them to keep up the optics as is required of them. Her maturity for her age had her on everyone's lips, and rumors flew around about the possibility of her being the replacement for Princess Anne as Princess Royal. But she wasn't just some kid with a maturity fetish, she was also a fashion head. Clothing lines used her as a representation for the most trendy dresses for her age. She brought the princess energy with her wherever she went and dominated headlines, just like her mother, Princess Kate Middleton. For a child who had grown up as the center of attention and almost rivaling her brother Prince George's popularity, the sudden decision from the king to give a royal title to her 7-year-old brother allegedly struck a nerve. While she has maintained her status as the mature sister, insiders suggest a brewing storm, raging inside their family. The spotlight has shifted and Prince Louis somehow has found his way into it, pulling him right next to Prince George in a popularity contest. And all he had to do was appear at a banquet hall when the king was in the mood to honor a 7-year-old with a royal title. Hence, in the cold walls of Buckingham Palace, where affection and popularity are determined by titles, ceremonies, and name, the balance tilts yet again, and a new Windsor siblings' legacy threatens to be born. Whether the king's actions ride on the clouds of a hazy mind born of his sickness or are supported by his need for penance and retribution, only time will tell. Do you think the king's actions were political or personal? Does the king's sickness clear his heart or cloud his judgment? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.